Hi, this is your host Swapnil Bhartiya, and we are here at Open Source Summit in Vienna, Austria. And today we have with us Mukul Karnik, GM of Search Services at AWS. Mukul, it's great to have you on the show.
Yeah, hi Swap. Great to be here and great to meet you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Of course, we are going to talk about open source. We'll talk about the announcement that you folks here made here. But before that, I will also talk about search services. Talk a bit about those.
As you said, I lead search services at AWS, and so I lead the Amazon OpenSearch service. I'm also responsible for Amazon's contribution to the OpenSearch project, which was the big announcement today. And I also lead Cloud Search, which is a service that Amazon's had for 10 plus years in the search space. So these are the portfolio of things I lead.
And can you talk about the foundation of search, Elasticsearch, how it evolved over time? And then we'll talk about what led to the creation of, Open Search Foundation as well.
So Elasticsearch, as open source project, existed since 2014, around that time frame. And Amazon offered an Amazon managed Elasticsearch service since 2015. And as customers who are looking to adopt search and log analytics grew, the popularity of that service grew as well. And so that's existed since 2015, and a lot of I guess innovations have happened since then.
Can you talk about some of the core when you talk about Elasticsearch or OpenSearch at AWS? It was like 2021, if I'm not wrong, back in those days. What are the core component? Because we can talk about so many things. It could be logging, matrices, observability. What are the core components of search?
At the foundation, at the sort of fundamental piece of OpenSearch is the search capability. And if you think of search, it's similar to what you find, like the way you power search is you have an index. And an index is nothing like, it's very similar to what you have at the back of a book. So like if you want to search for things in the book, you look up the index and you find where it is. Similarly, if you have all these documents that you want to search for, you need an inverted index, which is what OpenSearch has under the covers. It leverages Lucene, and then Lucene is another open source library. And that lets you power search for your application. So let's say you're building a website or a web application and you want to have search. You can use OpenSearch and you can index the documents there, and it uses an inverted index to then power search. And that is kind of the key fundamental technology that exists in OpenSearch. And then if you think of logs, right, and like one of the key things when you're debugging and something's going wrong and you're debugging something and you're searching for, I guess, the errors, you need search. And again, this inverted index helps you search for that information very quickly. And so if you think of search as a primitive and where all you need, think of OpenSearch as that kind of key primitive. So it's in search, in log analytics, also now used in security analytics use cases, so where you're searching for things. So, yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Now, talk about what the reason that you folks decided to move OpenSearch to a neutral foundation like the Linux Foundation.
As you know, we created OpenSearch in 2021, and our goal always was to have, it be a project where we have lots of people contributing, not just Amazon. And so from early days, we had folks contributing to OpenSearch, and as the project grew, as we had a lot more innovations in the project, we found more and more people wanting to contribute and be part of it. And so we opened up governance. We created this leadership committee last year where we had members from other companies be part of this committee. While we are doing that, we realized that we're starting to replicate many of the things that already exist in a foundation. And so for us, it just made like natural sense to have OpenSearch be part of a foundation. We also think it's a really good next step from a growth point of view, where we have all these partners part of the project. And one of the other benefits that we get is Linux Foundation has a lot of resources in terms of training, in terms of all the events that they do, and that helps us grow the project.
Can you also talk about the community is very, you folks announced today, but what are the players are, as you mentioned earlier, a lot of players were already involved. and you didn't. So talk about the community that is already there, and then we'll talk about how you want to grow the community.
We have, I think, more than 1,000 contributors now, more than 200 maintainers of the project. If you look at the contributors, more than half of them are actually outside of Amazon, and you have, folks like SAP who are contributing to the log ingestion system, or you have, folks like ByteDance who's contributing to the vector database capabilities in OpenSearch. Or so, what we are seeing is a lot of different, community members contributing to the project and adding different capabilities. And so our goal really has been to kind of drive this community participation. We also have this Slack workspace, which is open to anyone who can join, anyone who wants to join. And we see more than 2,000 people as part of that community, and a lot of different, whether it's technical questions or whether it's release timelines or how to use OpenSearch. Any of those kind of questions get asked in that forum. So it's really, the community has been growing, and with this we really expect more people and more companies to be part of OpenSearch.
When companies like AWS, when you contribute, I don't like the word donate. Donation is something you charity, you give the blanket to a poor, you're done with that. That is not the case with open source. You are still involved. So I prefer the term contribute versus donate.
I like that.
When you contribute a project that your own internal project to an external body like Linux Foundation, you lose control over it, over the project, because But sometimes folks have this misunderstanding that it's still this Microsoft or Oracle or AWS. They are the members, so they are controlling. But Linux Foundation, they have a very good structure in place. The technical steering committees, code is developed separately. Linux Foundation provides a lot of resources. Marketing is there, events is there. So can you talk about the structure that attracted, also where your competitors, you name some, they feel free to come and contribute. And even if you look at the Welke booth, there are AWS competitors. They're all standing together. Open source bring us together. Sales and marketing go and fight, for the market share. So can you talk about that aspect of open source where, yes, it came from AWS, but anybody can come in, contribute, and become a player.
That is the beauty of open source, where you have anyone coming in and contributing innovations to a project. I don't perceive actually it as losing control, but I perceive it more as ability to have innovations come from different areas, different companies, and you have a lot of, it's really, all these companies are made of people who are technically savvy and really great contributors, and so you want all of that innovation to come into the project. And so from that point of view, as you said, Linux Foundation has a great sort of structure which helps people guide or projects sort of be guided in a particular direction, and with all of the community participating, and the people who are making large contributions become part of the technical steering committee, and that's how you get to guide the project. And so to me, that is all goodness, and that kind of drives the open source innovation, and so I see that as a benefit.
What kind of, it's too early to talk about roadmap as such, but what are the areas where you're planning to grow as OpenSearch Foundation?
It's a great question. We actually just published our roadmap on GitHub, just because we just wanted to make everyone aware of what's going on. We've been publishing our roadmap actually for a long period of time since the project started, but we just published our 24-25 roadmap. It's all in the key areas. There's a lot of innovation going on in search right now. Search, if you think of it, is going through a transformation. With Gen AI and with vector database, search is evolving into semantic search, hybrid search, and so a lot of innovation going on in that space for us. We are so both from helping improving the relevance and accuracy of search, to other areas where we want to improve performance, because as latency matters and search performance matters a lot, to increasing scale, reducing costs. So a lot of innovations going on in search. Then if you look at log analytics, that in itself is another area where a lot of innovation is going on, where You have metrics, traces, and logs coming together, and so we have been working on some pretty innovative stuff there as well, and a lot of innovations going on there. And one of the big uh, push in the recent times for logs is log analytics can become expensive, and so we focused a lot on helping reduce cost of cost of doing log analytics. And then finally, one of the areas where we are starting to see a lot of traction is security analytics. So, customers using OpenSearch for security use cases, and so again, we have partners who we work with to deliver security analytics capability.
When we talk about logs, security, matrices, and then we have the whole very well defined observability space.
Right.
How is it like overlapping? Is it different? Because the lines get blurred so quickly that it's
Exactly.
hard whether I'm talking to a security guy or observability folks. So can you talk about how you look at it?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. What we see is, customers want to use OpenSearch for log analytics and observability, and then we have a different persona sometimes, like a security analyst or a SecOps person who wants to look at from the same set of logs, but from a security point of view. So in a lot of cases, the data, the underlying data, the logs are usually same. And so what happens with many systems is you end up duplicating the data, and then that can become quickly expensive. And as I was talking about, the search primitive that's there in OpenSearch is pretty powerful and can be used for both log analytics and security analytics. So what we are seeing is this convergence of observability use cases and security use cases. Mind you, like the personas are different. Like you have a DevOps engineer who's looking at the logs and observability, and then for security you have a SecOps or a security engineer looking at it. But the data that they're looking at and the kind of tools they need are very similar. They want to do correlations, they want to be able to do search, they want to do a different kind of analytics, and so the tools are very similar, but the personas are different, and so that's the kind of convergence we are seeing. And so we think having sort of purpose-built user interfaces and purpose-built tools for these personas would go a long way. And that's one of the things we are working on.
Thank you. One more thing, interesting thing with open source is that you create, like Linux is a very good example. Linux created it to solve his own problem. Now it's everywhere. AWS, it's all Linux and all. So when you look at OpenSearch, while it was, internal AWS project product, and now how do you see, or sometimes it's hard for us to see how community will use it. What are the potential, you touched upon your two aspects, where you see, hey, this is where people can use it or they're using it?
So we see a lot of different, folks use OpenSearch in many different ways. Whether it's to power search for their applications or search for their websites, or whether people are using it. So for search use cases, there's like if you look at inside Amazon, right? Amazon Music uses OpenSearch for search and even the vector capabilities and doing finding recommendations and those kind of things. So it's a pretty big user of internal search use case. For log analytics, a good example is SAP, who is a partner of OpenSearch. They have a log analytics service that they built on OpenSearch, and they have thousands of clusters running OpenSearch and doing log analytics. So what we see is a set of customers that are using OpenSearch at scale, and for pretty advanced use cases, whether it's in the search domain, observability, log analytics domain. If you look at Waza is a SIEM and security analytics platform that is built on OpenSearch. So we also see ISVs take OpenSearch and build their own products on top of that, which is pretty powerful. And given OpenSearch is open source and has pretty permissive license and now part of the foundation, everyone feels comfortable using something like this, whether it's they're building their own applications or whether they're using for their own purpose.
Earlier, you kind of touched upon the elephant in the room these days with Gen AI, and I was talking to David before that, and I talked to open source innovation a few weeks ago. That when it comes to Gen AI and it comes to open source, it's not as easy as the LAMP stack. It's not just the code part. There are a lot of other code. So how do you see Gen AI, open source, and OpenSearch? Any relation, any potential use cases there?
Lots of use cases. Gen AI, as you know, is a pretty fast evolving space right now. Everyone is trying to figure out, what are the applications that are going to stick? What are the use cases that are going to come about that are going to really work out? And we see OpenSearch as actually playing a big role. That's because if you look at any of these Gen AI stacks, a lot of it involve, search. A lot of them involve like conversational agents and conversational use cases. So like even let's say you pick the popular ones such as the ones that let you do code, help you write code. In many of these cases, what you need under the covers is a search engine to power and find the right information. And so many of these applications, Gen AI based, are using OpenSearch or similar system under the covers. And so we see a lot of potential for those use cases to be built on OpenSearch. And with open source especially, people then don't have to worry about licensing or all of those things, and so they can take and deploy those pretty easily. With now many of the meta models also available in open source, people are able to now will create some of these things in open. One of the things that we did is we've integrated OpenSearch into many of the open source toolkits like LangChain and LangFlow, and so OpenSearch is available as part of those, and so you can create an open source stack that you can use for Gen AI use cases.
Well, the fact is that AWS, you folks have been doing open source for a while. I mean, for the early days, but there's a difference. Sometimes people confuse that open source only means direct code contribution, But consuming open source, when I used to talk to Linus, and people would say, hey, AWS is not contributing. He's like, I may not see the AWS in the email, but the person may be contributing from the person. And there are a lot of folks who are contributing. But now, like the Seattle Velky was there, now OpenSearch. So which means that we are hearing a lot of active open source from AWS. Can you talk about this change is happening, or it was already there? We are hearing more about it.
I think it's some amount of learning that Amazon has had over the years, where as Linus was saying, were involved in open source before, but just we've become more prolific contributors, and with projects like Valky and OpenSearch, we are like becoming very active in the overall project maintenance, and so that is like AWS has become more involved in open source, and we do we are strongly committed to growing open source, but also making sure that the projects that we offer as services are thriving as in open source, because we do think that having a thriving open source project and a community helps our customers, and in that way helps AWS.
No, I think it goes both ways because open source itself is not good enough. Like it can solve day one problem, but you do need a commercial player who you can go to. Like Red Hat is there, Canonical is there, Microsoft, AWS, where open source project is there. But if I don't have developer resources, I can go to the company. Hey, I want to use it, but I want to go. So it goes both ways. Open source aspect of commercial, which also second point is that when you're looking at a company size of AWS, you have to be very careful when you are committing to open source, because first of all, you cannot go back. And second thing, you have to look at IPs and legal. So it's not as easy as a small startup that comes up, release open source, 6 months later, we are changing the license. So you have to be very careful also to move, So you have to consider a lot of factors, but which also means that we will hear a lot about open source from AWS, and I'll get to talk to a lot of folks at AWS as well, which is good news.
Yeah. The one thing that's kind of slightly different about OpenSearch, what you said probably applies to other projects, but in OpenSearch, the way we do product development is in open source. So a lot of our roadmap, everything is actually out there in GitHub, and so all of our contributions are out in GitHub. And so the team first thinks about open source and then figuring out how to get into the Amazon managed service. So that's a kind of change in mindset.
So
that we
open
have.
source is your upstream, and
Exactly.
that is the downstream. Yeah, that's also a great model. But the difference is that sometimes when it's company or open source, you can always flip the switch. But
Right,
now it's part
right.
of foundation.
Exactly.
So that is the great kind of progression in the
Benefit
right
of-
direction. Yeah,
exactly.
awesome. Mukul, once again, thank you so much for taking time out today to sit down with me and talk about open source and also larger open source at AWS. Thanks for those great insights, and I would love to chat with you folks again. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great to meet you, Swap. Thanks.